I love building teams. If there's a common theme throughout everything I've always done is I've felt very strongly that people need to be put in a position where, one, they can succeed, two, they can make mistakes, and three, they grow. Having worked with professional services with two of the big four, with the financial services company, and now with Cisco or the Boston Blockchain Association, that's what makes things tick, and that's what allows you to get results. We trust each other, so trust is huge. And knowing that regardless of whether someone's within your team or someone is part of the team, everybody's going to be pointed in the same direction, looking to achieve the same goals. You must have a firm conviction and a belief in what you're doing. You're not doing it just because it has a financial outcome. But when I have worked with startups, the founders, and there doesn't need to be a big team, but the ones that have been successful, they have been.
My name is Jochem Van Der Veer. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called TheyDo, the journey management platform for business decision-making. We raised over $50 million and are growing globally. Our enterprise customers include Ford, J&J, the Home Depot, and Pfizer. I mean, wherever you look, understanding customers is key to staying ahead. But in order to do this at scale, aligning so many different teams with the customer journey is incredibly hard, but it is possible. I really wish this podcast existed before we started our company, because so many companies are organizing around journeys and there's so much to learn. So in order to share what I'm learning, what I'm hearing with our community, I meet with industry experts. And in my video podcast, I'm here to explore the world of business strategy, design, and journeys, customer journeys, to really get an understanding of how leaders are changing their way in their business. So let's dive into the show. My guest today is Eric Roux. He is a customer experience director at Cisco, and no doubt that he's passionate about driving customer value and delivering exceptional results. But what stood out to me, and what I really want to dig into today, is his unique partnership with sales. It's not common these days that sales and customer experience collaborate or even think about the same customer experience together. But that's one of the leading conversations that we're going to have today. Besides leading customer experience, he's also co-founder of the Boston Blockchain Association, and he's actively supporting tech innovators from ideation to funding. And I mean, that's my world, but let's see where we get to today. So, Eric, very pleased to have you on to the podcast today.
Thank you. Very pleased to be here, Jochem.
So let's start with your partnership with sales. I mean, partnering with sales to deliver on the promise. Okay, what does that mean to you?
So the first and most important thing is being aligned with the customer or the client. And as a company or as a firm, whether you're in consulting, whether you're at Cisco, whether you're the Boston Blockchain Association, you've absolutely got to be aligned with one voice. And so, sales is initiating and identifying opportunities. Those opportunities get developed. If you're going to get the results from the opportunity that was discussed with a client or a customer, you absolutely have to really understand what they were saying. So that's where the interaction with sales and the customer becomes fundamental. So the partnership with sales is really about showing up together, speaking with one voice. People know their role. The partnership, each individual knows their role. They work together. They show up stronger together. They're very complementary, and they know how they support each other, and they know what they can call on each other for, and so does your client or customer.
Right. I come from a world where we like to say, right, marketing is making a promise that product has to keep. That's true in technology companies, but here it sounds like there's a more broader go-to-market motion at play where sales is leading the initiative and then customer experience is the real partner. So why do you think not many organizations are doing the same? Why is it so hard to do this? And things get chucked over the fence, promised land, and it's very hard to keep that promise. And customer experience is maybe doing the patchwork or, being the goalie to make sure that we are not completely obliterated by the customer. But why do you think that's not many organizations are actually thinking about this in the same way?
So the patchwork and the customer experience practice really is about finding the gaps and filling them up and finding your place to achieve more, finding the things that people aren't seeing that really make a big difference. So that's one thing. But the real way to show up together and to define what needs to be done, understand how that needs to happen, how the customer likes it, that really just comes from how people interact and how they listen and how they behave. So it's about people. So you could argue that the more experience people have with maybe managing a team, interacting with people, and the more they see that common objective, the more effective they're going to be. And that's what makes it work. And I think everybody's very caught up in the technology and the tools and the journeys. But actually, when you think about what I need to do for a customer or a client, regardless of the domain, it could be technology, it could be professional services, you've absolutely got to have this alignment, and you have to know how to orchestrate together and with the people that deliver the results. And you've got to have the continuity. And the continuity means where sales is in the leadership role, you're complementary, and where customer experience needs to be in the leadership role, sales recognizes that and they're complementary. It doesn't work if they're in two different, segments of the playing field, right? They got to be on the same side together.
Who initiates this? Because in many organizations, the pre-sales and the post-sales organization are fragmented, right? Typically, customer experience sits somewhere in the post-sales organization, especially when we look at tech organizations, tech companies. But talk to me about how you've been developing this. Like, was there a mandate to do this, or was that already the case when you got this role, or was this something you initiated? Like, how do we go about building these partnerships? Where does this start?
So I think it's never changed for me since I started my career. So I started my career in consulting, and even as a junior consultant, when I had leadership, steering me, helping me learn. And when I had a client, there was no textbook. There, it really was about understanding what they wanted to achieve. And when, in that case, it would have been a partnership and one of the big four. So your partner, your lead manager, you would understand what they were positioning with the customer or client. And then you would just work through that. And that is about connecting with the person, understanding what they expect, having an ongoing dialogue with them. And that doesn't change. Having worked with professional services with two of the big four, with the financial services company, and now with Cisco or the Boston Blockchain Association, that's what makes things tick, and that's what allows you to get results. So the personal relationships, the deep understanding of what's expected.
What do you think we've lost in formalizing the discipline of like customer experience? I mean, you've said that before customer experience or CX even had a name, right? Consulting was already doing it, and I think like that's also what you're hinting here, hinting about here. Like, what have we lost in formalizing it as a discipline?
In every profession, there are people that are naturals at it, and I think that the top performers in customer experience, they don't need the textbook. You could present the methodology 5 or 6 different ways. They would always make it work and be successful. And they may cut corners, they may go deeper, but the point is they get it. So you need the tools, but I think as it becomes a more dominant specialty, maybe there are a lot of people that are getting lost in the methods and forgetting that because technology plays such a dominant role in everything we do and how we get it done, we get caught up in that. And technology moves quickly, so we're constantly playing catch up or trying to get ahead and get the best results from whatever tools we use or we're trying to deliver to a customer. So you've really just got to be able to apply it in practice day to day without the textbook, if you want to call it that. And I think that's probably what people need to be more confident in.
How do you go about building your teams? I mean, it sounds like if this was easy, we just find the right people and all else will follow. but that's not really what is happening there. So how do you go about building teams that are actually able to do this and not just follow the textbook or someone else's playbook?
Well, look, I love building teams. If there's a common theme throughout everything I've always done is I felt very strongly that people need to be put in a position where one, they can succeed, two, they can make mistakes, and three, they grow. So when you do that, I think it's the perfect mix for people to learn the methods they need, but also experiment and also try things. So you get a very practical approach to what you're doing, whether you're junior or more senior. And then the second thing that's really key is whether you bring your own team or whether you're teaming up with your client, in the end, you're bringing those people together as a group to achieve a goal. And it's finding the chemistry, it's finding putting the right people together for the right things. And again, orchestrating. I love that word, but it's orchestrating the teams and building them up over time.
Okay, so let's use orchestrating. I like that word as well. I mean, we have journey orchestration, which is just like a fancy word for marketing automation. I know I'm brushing some people against the hairs right now, but let's put it where it is right now. But orchestration is about connecting the dots inside the organization, right? Conducting almost like different teams, different people to all work in unison. So back to like the sales and customer experience partnership, right? You mentioned like when sales leads, you're supportive. When customer experience leads, sales is supportive. How do we incentivize people with the right goals, with the right approaches? That goes way beyond like, okay, we need to, impact customer satisfaction and NPS, but how do we incentivize the customer experience organization to share goals with the sales organization that are both helping the customer move forward or get what they want? Like, how do you go about setting those goals and help the teams hit them?
We spend time together and we invest in having a team dynamic, which encourages us to take time together and share what needs to be done or the challenges and the problems. And we trust each other. So trust is huge. And knowing that regardless of whether someone's within your team or someone is part of the team, everybody's going to be pointed in the same direction, looking to achieve the same goals. So you've got to have the alignment on the goals, and you have to cultivate that trust amongst a group of people who lead and ensure that everybody else involved sees that and they feel it. And that enables you to engage others in understanding that. And again, trusting, being confident that they can do things, they can own it, and they don't need a lot of coaching. They just do the right things because they see it. So maybe role modeling is part of it.
And then what is the makeup of such a team? It's just the customer, that's the account. There's a big customer that is crossing multiple teams, probably at Cisco, many different people involved. Like when you lead, like how do you make sure that your team members are actively involving the others? Like what is the typical makeup of such a team? How do you help them to do this? Like by sitting in that room, by making sure they're aligned. Okay, but like maybe give an example of like how that plays out in practice.
Yeah, I think that referring to the Boston Blockchain Association or what I do with Cisco, the principle's the same. You sit in the room together and you think about what you're trying to achieve. And once you've discussed that and you've aligned on it, you've had that interaction, and you can move on to, okay, what do we do next? How are we going to do this? And you can get started. So you've got an example of your customer is having a good example is if you are in a tech company and you're delivering solutions, applications, let's say different types of applications or different types of technology, there's a lot to learn. If they're not learning how to use it, everyone has a problem. The customer has a problem. The vendor has a problem. So what you need to do is you need to go deep with the right people. So who knows how to walk the customer and the team, someone from the team through that problem? Who knows how to choose the right person to be involved in that, who has the right capability? Technical, but also to take it on themselves when they've been through that conversation and then roll with it. And then you keep working with them and coaching them and supporting where necessary. And it's really important to be able to know what you have to bring to different people involved in whatever you're working on, whether they have a lot of experience, little experience, whether they are more administrative or more engineering focused. It really is a game of identifying people's capabilities relative to the challenge that you're taking on together.
It sounds like you're positioning customer experience, like the function or the role, in the middle of the engagement as the orchestrator to help get the customer to deliver the outcome to them, or to get the value that they signed up for, to use the application to achieve X, Y, Z. Is that the right way to think about it?
Absolutely. I think the biggest challenge is agreeing on what an outcome is. Is it a goal? Is it a date? Is it measurable? Is it not? But ultimately, if you're in a room with a customer and your team, and you're spending time together, you're working through things, there has to be a really constructive and positive dynamic. Otherwise, the whole meeting falls apart. So essentially, you are in the center and you're trying to understand what needs to be done. And then you're trying to put the people together to do that. And sales and customer experience can be in the same room. Nobody's going to be talking about the techniques or the journey mapping. People know what that's all about, and they know what it is in the context of the firm they work with, the customer they work with. So you construct as you go, and then you execute on that. So yeah, it is absolutely about how to tie those different strings together and go from point A to point B and help people recognize what result has been delivered.
So this is an organization where customer experience can be represented by a person in the room with the customer, right? But not everyone serves large enterprise companies, and there are many CX teams that, have millions of consumers as their customers. So being with customers in the room is hard. Like, how have you seen this play out in those types of organizations, right? Where customer experience is more of an internal function to focus on the data, to move the needle on NPS, which it traditionally have been. But many customer experience teams that are forward-looking are now really thinking along in these lines, right? They're the central coordination point, except that maybe they can't be with the customer because it's not a large enterprise customer. We can spend the time and the resources and have people together. But we have to think about scaling ourselves and making sure that the whole organization can be acting as one, serving the customer. So how do we go about it in an organization where there is less time, or even it's impossible to sit with every single customer because you're a consumer business?
I hope I can answer your question, because you're probably hearing that I have a really big bias for interaction. So I'm very used to high touch environments.
Right.
When you're in a high touch environment and you think about, NPS or CSAT, if you're successful, you know it. You don't need the data. You know what's going wrong. You know where the problems are. And absolutely, the world of, high volume, transactions, customers is very different, much more transactional. So the measurement becomes much more critical, and there's less intimacy with the customer. So and I can't speak for other people who are in that world all the time, but I still think the relationship with some stakeholder is critical. And I think having the collective information about what they're doing, how we're performing, is absolutely critical. So it does become transactional. It does become more challenging than where you can really get a good read from your customer because you sit in the room with them, because you speak to them. That is really different. Yeah. And transactionally, I think, you identify the solutions and what someone wants to get out of it. And then actually at the end, I think you either know if they have it and they're telling you they do or they don't. And they're telling you, well, yeah, this is really good. Let's do some more of this. And then you see growth.
And you don't need to measure the NPS at all, right? Because you will see retention, you will see revenue come in, expansion from these accounts, and that's a better metric to understand if you're doing well.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't understand if a customer is happy or not happy? Like, think about any of us that has transacted on with some online shopping experience, and when it goes really well, nothing's discussed. But when it doesn't, it goes pretty deep on trying to sort it out. And there's something specific that's gone wrong, and that's addressed when you're talking to whoever's on the other side. But I think whoever's on the other side always knows if it's been good or bad. And I think as anybody who deals with a customer or a client, whatever you want to call it, you're always going to know if it's going well or not.
I like that distinction actually, because like now that you're saying it in this way, in high touch environments, CX, customer experience, is almost like a different beast than in low touch or consumer focused
Yeah.
businesses like telcos or utilities companies, right? Where the customer is literally a number and we don't know what's going on. And, when they call, it's probably bad and we just need to figure out how bad it is. And if it's a systemic problem, we need to address. And that's where CX comes in. But building those relationships and having an emotional connection with customers, like it's almost non-existent. Maybe the marketing team or the design team owns some of that because they run interviews and they talk to customers and they bring them into panels, but it's definitely not the customer experience function, right? They're so focused on keeping the score.
Yeah. Well, look, if you're responsible for measuring, your scorekeeping,
Right.
if you're interacting with people, you're again coming back. You're not measuring data. You're measuring. Are you identifying what needs to be discussed, where the problem lies, getting agreement on how to go about addressing it, and what next. So that's an experience. So I think everybody in some way, shape, or form is involved in customer experience. Now, the techniques, if you start talking to someone who is a finance person about the journey map, and CSAT, they're going to go, well, hang on, I've heard of this, but, and if you talk to someone from customer experience about tax accounting or something, you get the same reaction. So everybody has their craft. But in the end, regardless of what you do, you are having an impact on an individual. And if that goes well, continue. If that doesn't go well, I think everybody knows what happens then. It either gets resolved or you need to go find some other client or customer.
Yeah.
So, customer experience is it's very measurable, and it doesn't have to be measurable with data. That I think is fundamental.
Should it even be a department?
It's I'll tell you, when I feel like I've achieved something when a tech engineer who is absolutely incredibly specialized and recognized as a leader in their specialty, given that so many engineering domains exist, when they get the whole point of going beyond the engineering and how to go through the process of solving a problem with a customer, that's for me a big win. The second, so I think it has to be built into everybody's capabilities. But an engineer is never going to be a specialist on journey mapping, just like someone specialist in journey mapping is never going to be an engineer. But that I would say, for me, the best experience with people is when I'm working with the sales team and one of them says, I'm going to be talking to the customer about this, and what I want you to help me do is prepare the discussion. What do I need to go talk about with them? How do you want me to prepare what we need to position so that, one, we've identified the problem that we need to be discussing and working on together with the customer. Two, I've done it in a way which gets the right information. And three, I've done it in a way which is very time effective, because any customer you've had, what happens when you're wasting their time or what happens when you're not well prepared? It doesn't go well. So when you take someone out of their domain and you help them with what you typically achieve in customer experience, and they don't even realize that's what it is, that is a huge win. And that's what creates the power of a strong team, I think, in a large customer relationship.
If you're enjoying this conversation, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast channel and leave a review. It makes all the difference. The Experience Edge podcast is where I interview business leaders, CX pioneers, and the best designers who share their insight on creating business impact, having an edge on the customer experience. Do you want more exclusive content and behind-the-scenes access? Check out the Experience Edge podcast on YouTube and LinkedIn so you don't miss a thing. I want to switch gears a bit to the role of AI, and we can gear it to high touch environments, because I think that's fascinating, right? I mean, everyone is geeking out on the role of AI in low touch environments, product-led growth companies, and, being completely focused on full autonomous workflows, agents, and scaling as fast as you can without any customer interaction, preferably, right? Because then you're doing a perfect job. So talk to me about what you're seeing in terms of the role of AI in your role, like in high touch enterprise relationships where the interaction with humans matter, but maybe in the example you just gave, like that preparation for the meeting. I mean, why can't AI do that? Do you need a customer experience professional for that? Maybe to strategize on a higher level right now. But what are some of the ways that you're seeing AI really take a foothold in the high touch relationship?
So a real life example is, as a consultant, I would prepare meetings with multiple attendees from the customer, from my clients. It would take me days to prepare. And 3 or 4 weeks ago, I got our team together, our CX team, and I was preparing. And I just said to myself, hang on a minute, I'm going to prepare very differently than I would have in the past. And I hadn't put a team meeting like this together where there was a large number of people with some of our leadership over a couple days, where it really needed to be well thought through and prepared. So I prepared something, and then I used AI to refine it and develop it, and then was able to discuss that with several people to really enrich it. So when we got together, we had a great couple of days. So in that example, the AI is a supporting tool, and that probably saved me at least 3 days. So there's a real win to being more effective and smarter with what you do. But you can't just pull AI and pull something through an AI process and suddenly go and do it extremely well. I think that's the point of it. It's a very good supplement, and maybe that's going to change over the coming months, years, who knows. But at the moment, I think if people think about it in terms of it can make my job better, it can make me more effective, immediately AI is there. And I think the other thing is we are seeing it applied in different parts of technology where things can be done proactively rather than reactively. And I think that's very valuable too, because it provides a whole different dimension to customer service and support.
How do you think that is affecting the high touch environment? Are you able to do and serve more customers with the same people you have because they're simply more productive? Or are there innovative ways that actually you are moving the customer along in their journey to value?
Yeah, I mean, I think you really put the focus on the right point. It's what can you do differently for the customer that really brings them a lot of value.
Yeah.
And that's what they're also trying to do for the people that they work within their organizations. So that's really what I think everyone needs to be thinking about is what are you bringing to your customers? How do you use it to change the experience they have with you? It's not about can you do the journey map faster or can you, of course you can develop software quicker, but in the end, when it touches people, how much more do you deliver? How much more do you do? What better results do you get? What growth can you generate with your customer because they just love working with you because you're creative, you're innovative, you're not staying in the same routine. And that was very much what happened when the internet came about. But it was so gradual. I think people didn't see it impacting themselves. So a lot of people, believe it or not, still have that benchmark, so they can compare to what's happening with AI. So it's almost, you can think, well, if this is what happened when the internet changed how we work and how we get things done, then how is this doing compared to that, and what's the impact? So it's a very different experience, and I think it's more consequential, and it has far more upside potential to change things, bring value, and it has its risks in so many different ways, maybe that we don't know yet.
Now, the way I think about it is like compared to the internet, getting started, like to get access to it, like that was a very slow burn before everyone's on the internet. But now everyone's in market. Like 95% of people with a software budget are buying AI tooling, right? Everyone is expecting magic, uh, and but also your clients, right? And I mean, to draw the parallel with the consultant role, they struggle big time because before you spent 500,000 on an engagement that delivered you a 80-page PowerPoint deck.
Yes.
But today the expectation is that maybe a software vendor like your team, like your customer experience team, can do this in an afternoon using their judgment, using AI to deliver the same quality, right? So what are customers going to do? Where is actually the request going? Are they going to the consulting firms? Are they asking their preferred tech vendor they have a good relationship with? I think it will be the generalist who have a great relationship that will get the job versus the big brand that is known for credibility or like is a credible source. Would you agree?
I think that I can only speak from my experience, and I think the word trust comes out. So first, from the examples that I gave, the consultant's role, just like the people I work with at the BBA and the people that participate, just like the people at Cisco that I work with, how we do things changes. But you're not going to be doing anything unless your counterpart trusts you, a customer or a partner, like for the BBA. So that being said, the role of a consultant is always going to be different than the role of people who are in there delivering technology. Just like if you take physicians, a cardiologist is going to be different than a dermatologist or a dentist, right? So everybody has their role. And the question is, how are people in those roles changing how they do things? But yeah, I mean, I've heard the story in media, in marketing, that is not a strong point for me, but I've understood how much it's changing how they need to work with their clients. So people have to change and adjust. So that consultant example, I guess it's really impacting how they get their work done and how they're perceived in terms of delivering the results.
If we think about the intangibles like trust and relationship, you know when you know it. In high touch environments, it's true. But I think there's also something that is underlying today. Like we're trying to quantify the unquantifiable today in customer experience obsession with metrics. I mean, before we even started recording, we were talking about it, and you said like I'm fascinated by our obsession with metrics today in the customer experience realm. Can you talk to me about what's on your mind when you think about trying to quantify the unquantifiable? I mean, maybe that's my words of trying to define this, but how do you think about like are we measuring the wrong things? Are we focused on the wrong things? Are we trying to do something that's not even necessary to do?
I think that people get caught up in it, yes. And I think that everybody in their area of specialty needs to know what data matters. And they need to be convincing as to what that is. And they need to put not a box around it, but there needs to be some boundaries. And, it's tough for someone with, a few years of experience to be able to pass this kind of judgment. But if you've been in your profession for a while, you get to a point where you kind of have a good feel for what matters. So I think, yeah, there needs to be some boundaries because people are trying to measure too much. And you have to measure, you have to use measures to know if you're getting the right results and you're improving. And if there's a new area that you're looking into, you've got to decide what metrics you need, but you also have to rationalize them over time. So like anything, you use them, you put them in place, you learn from that, you rationalize it. And as you do that, you make sure you've got everybody in agreement with it. But the tools now are so powerful to get data, to look at data. I think it's really important to take the time to step back and decide what matters. I mean, that really is it in each domain. And a team does that.
Can you give an example of how you go about like working backwards from the outcome? Let's say our customer has a specific outcome in mind. How do you go about like breaking that down into the specific steps, places to go to, people to work with, but really like measuring this from a customer experience standpoint? And of course, I do not expect you to say like, and therefore we slap on NPS and CSAT, but really like, how do you break down an outcome for your customer? You can take any example you want that comes to mind. And then show me how you are thinking about putting the right measures in place for the customer experience team to be held accountable for.
So there's, if you're supporting a customer, you need to be able to measure what you've agreed you're going to do for them. So let's take a tech company that has any sort of an application that's used by a customer. It could be for accounting, it could be for market research. If you have disruptions, if you have service outages, it has to be measured. So you have to define what you're going to measure, how you're going to measure, and agree that with your customer. And you need to revisit those measures on a regular basis. And you need to be transparent about the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Because when you have a good customer relationship, you work through that together. But you're committed to always showing improvement. So I think that's an example of how you can come to agreement on the metrics that matter.
So when I'm thinking about this, it's like, not to be like devil's advocate, but the customer experience team will say, sure, if outage or downtime or uptime is critical to you, it's not our metric, right? I mean, engineering is responsible for it, or product is responsible for it.
The thing is I think a customer looks at you as representing your company, your brand, your whatever you do beyond just what they've bought from you. So whether it's product, whether it's engineering, whether it's sales, what goes well and what doesn't go well reflects on everybody. It's not segmented. So when we encounter issues, and I would say throughout my career, who was accountable for it is one thing, and dealing with that the right way, constructively and learning and all that. But if those things happen on a regular basis, I don't think a customer really, it doesn't really matter who. It's why aren't you as an organization bringing me collectively what I need to not have this happening? So you need the guys that are figuring out what's going wrong in the process to sort it out and engaging with the customer. You need product, you need engineering, you need, whatever it is. You've got to be able to, coming back to earlier part of the conversation, bring the right people together to work through it right until you've resolved it and you show the results over time. So how you decide on what you're going to show over time and at what frequency then becomes really mission critical.
Question that I have next is almost like, should customer experience teams in a high touch environment be incentivized by revenue targets? Get commission on revenue? I mean, in most post-sales organizations, like this is a debate, right? Customer success team, there's the account executives, there's the customer experience team. Like
human nature and money are it's a constant. It's a constant for everybody. But I think that there is, And so how you reward people in their areas of responsibility is I think what you're getting at, which becomes so critical. And I think it needs to be different for different roles. So if you're motivated by a commission, in my opinion, you're not going to be motivated by solving a problem or bringing a really positive result and experience to someone. Like they've been trying to work through something with their teams and they haven't been able to, and you bring the right people and you get the whole team together, yours and theirs, and lo and behold, a few months later or whatever it takes, you've gotten to the result. That's because you're focused on the result, not because someone's going to pay you for that result. So if your customer is growing over time, your customer experience is ensuring the customer wants to keep working with you and wants to do more. So you're enabling the sales team to win. And I think that's a really healthy dynamic. So if everybody gets a commission from winning, I think you lose part of that dynamic of focusing on getting results, on what was promised, versus identifying opportunities, cultivating those until you've convinced someone buying, a stakeholder, that you can deliver them something that brings them a result. There's really two worlds, but they've got to be tied together.
Speaking of two worlds, you've been in multi-billion-dollar tech firms and scrappy startups, helping them to get to their Series A funding, right? Who gets closer to the customer?
It's you're not going anywhere in a startup if you're not close to the customer. And I do think as organizations get larger, certain people play a role that's much closer to the customer than others. But in both, anybody that gets recognized for a skill and a result has a big impact on the customer. And they are hugely valued. Like I see that all the time. I've always seen it. A customer or client always recognizes the people that make a difference. They can see it, they can feel it, the dynamic is there. And I think that's true in a startup, a medium-sized company, or a large one, or in a not-for-profit organization or association. And that, the smaller the organization, the more the individual has an impact, the more you see it. In larger organizations, some of that can be diluted.
In smaller organizations, you also don't see a CX role typically, right? Not even a department, but also not a role. And
who isn't in CX when you're in a startup?
Exactly. Yeah. But then at some point, we lose it. We forget about the customer, and then we think like, oh, let's solve it by adding a department to it.
Yeah, you specialize people, and maybe that's where you come to what is it you're trying to achieve? How do you measure it, and how do you orchestrate it with the right combination of talent? And everybody plays their role, and collectively that team achieves what those individuals in the startup touch and feel every day, because if something goes well, they know it, and when they get a no, they know it as well. It happens all day long.
How do you advise those founders to build something that is intimate but also can scale, like that stays close to their customer? I mean, not everyone has the privilege to work with like high-touch customers only. I'm sure many of the companies that you coach, advise, have more of an SMB or like even a consumer focus. So how do you help them stay on track to stay close to their customer? Like, what do you say to them?
Conviction. You must be convinced. You must have a firm conviction and a belief in what you're doing. You're not doing it just because it has a financial outcome. So when I've worked with startups, and I do less of that now, but when I have worked with startups, the founders, and there doesn't need to be a big team, but the ones that have been successful, they have been so sort of marinated in what they're doing, and they eat, live, and breathe it all the time, and they're driving to be successful. If you don't have that kind of compulsive passion for what you're doing, it's going to be tough, because you got to take the hard knocks as well. So that's one thing. And I think the hardest part, I think, is how do you filter everything that's happening to focus on the right things that matter? And there's no magic to that, and there's a bit of trial and error. So that's really I think those are the two things that matter.
But it sounds like even at a multi-billion-dollar scale, that is still true, right? It's like there's really an art to prioritizing well. It
There's,
doesn't change. It's not like we can solve that with technology or processes. Like it's still the same, it sounds like.
yeah, I think that throughout any of our careers, we can probably each remember two or three people who have just said that person is phenomenal, and here's why. And I
Mhm.
think the common denominator is because they were fortunate that they chose the right thing to do. They love what they're doing. Everybody has issues with what they're doing. Not every day is perfect, but they really chose what's well suited to them. So they're made for it. And that's really what's key, because whether they're in a small organization or a large, people feel that. And I think it's those people that become actually the best at their craft, like someone who's a medic, or they become great leaders because people feel it and they're not following, but they just say, this person really makes a lot of sense. And it's no wonder they're very successful.
What would be an example of that? People you have worked with or are working with in customer experience? Like, what are the traits other than like everyone can feel it and yes, he or she is special, but like what are the traits that you are looking for when you're hiring that next rock star into your team?
I like it when they've been through the school of hard knocks. You never always win. If you've had some tough learning experiences, that's a great thing. I think the second is they really need to know their domain and have really good sound experience in it, because then they don't need the textbook, they don't need the supervision, they need the teaming, they need to work as part of a team to just achieve more, but they really bring something that makes a big difference. And when you add them into a team, you believe that the team dynamic's going to change, the team's going to grow, people's roles will evolve. So they have to be someone who's going to contribute to changing how things work as well. And they have to work independently as well as working in a team. So those are a number of things. I'm sure I've missed some things, but those are the first ones that come to mind.
To what extent are you worried about the the impact AI has on like entry level jobs? Because you say like they have to have that experience, they have to have been living through some of that hardship to really understand what it takes to be exceptional in customer experience. But it also implies that they have to start somewhere, right? Somewhere else, perhaps. And a lot of entry level jobs are getting eaten by AI because they are keeping the score. They are doing a lot of,
Yeah.
analytics work that can be replaced by something artificial today. So the entry level jobs are getting slower. To what extent are you worried about this? That will have a longer term impact on the function, the role, the career to be in customer experience.
Well, come back to the customer experience piece in a sec, but I think of it in two ways. So the one is at all levels, how do we do our homework on AI and understand how to exploit it to perform better, to achieve more, to learn more? So that's one thing I think is important. The second way, I think, in any profession, and if you don't do that, you'll fall behind. So there's something about having to get to grips with it in order to really um, remain, as a performer, it's going to have to be part of what you do and how you do it, I think. The second part is when I think of my kids who are early in career, and I always talk to them about, well, what are you seeing that's happening with AI and what you do, and is it changing this or is it changing that, and what are you doing? Not what are you doing to learn about it, but you know where are you seeing it, and awareness. And when it comes to customer experience, I think the positive impact is going to be on exploiting what the data is telling us. So if you take a pool of metrics for a couple of years, you could spend days looking at that. And, Excel spreadsheets can go pretty deep and be pretty complex, but you can also take that data, run it through AI, and start trying to take out what's most important from it. So that's very positive. And I think that customer experience practitioners are going to have to be able to do that. The other thing is what they're doing may change and what they're working on may change. So staying close to the technology and understanding how it's changing is very important as well. What you've done in the past may not be what you need to be doing today, right? The solutions you work with will change.
No, that's my wish as well, right? I mean, ultimately, keeping the score is an evolution of customer experience management for the last decade or so, right? Where huge emphasis was on surveys and analyzing them and then inferring some business impact from it and perhaps impacting the business, but like it's more like hit and miss. There's so much more to it, but it's hard work. And the analytics is possible with technology, but only since a year or so, AI is getting really good at it. And before that, 80% of time was spent on analyzing the data to infer the insights or to get the report out to the executive, who then said like, thank you, but I won't act, because it wasn't rooted in anything else than just like, here's my data, here's my CSAT, here's my MPS, here's my numbers. And no one really cared. So I'm actually rooting for this to free up the mental capacity of those people to say, hey, I'm going to be close to customers again. I'm going to be bringing that perspective.
Yeah, I think who has ever used CSAT or NPS without having to look into it in the context of what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve? The pure numbers have no value until you think them through and you apply them in the context of what you're doing. And I couldn't agree with you more. Being able to get better data, more important messaging out of what it's showing is going to be super valuable in freeing people up to actually spend time with a customer or a client on dealing with what needs to be remediated is probably too strong a word, but the problem that needs to be addressed.
No, exactly. And I mean, people have already realized like we shouldn't tie bonus and incentives too much to those metrics anymore. Like that was also a thing of the past. There's still a lot of organizations that are doing it. Hence my question, like, should CX be more incentivized on revenue goals, which is more of an objective measure of success, because if the customer is successful, they will happily give you more money and do more with you because it's a win-win for everyone. But I mean, that's ultimately where I hope this is going, where we start or stop keeping the score in that way and start to be useful again, thinking about the customer and helping the business get close to them. So
yeah, all of us have had good managers and bad managers. And when the good managers really understands what makes you tick and they have the kind of structure to reward you, if that exists for all roles and it's done differently for different roles, that's fine. But you still need the right people to understand what that person is achieving. But it's still about people. Keep coming back to that.
Amen. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining me today. I mean, if people want to find you, for the blockchain enthusiasts who are listening, perhaps we didn't talk about that today, but if people want to find you, what's the best place to reach out and learn more about how you think and how you work?
Well, you can reach me if you look for the Boston Blockchain Association. It's EROUX, EROUX, at bostonblockchain.org. That's one way. And I'm also on LinkedIn. So, feel free to reach out, and happy to continue digging into these things and making it relevant and sharing experience. Like, to me, that's what's so important is what do we do as experienced managers, call it, to share that with others who are younger in career or in a different specialty, to bring something to them, right? How does that work? So, yeah, that's happy to discuss.
I love it. Eric, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for the opportunity to do this with you, Jochem. It's been great fun and really interesting.
All right, and that's it. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this valuable today, don't forget to subscribe to the Experience Edge on your favorite podcast channel, leave a review, and share it with your team. I'd be delighted. Today's episode was brought to you by Daydo, the AI journey management solution for enterprise. To have an edge on your business strategy and to know why your customers do what they do, visit daydo.com and explore more resources to accelerate your customer experience game. And remember, the journey to creating customer-centric impact never ends, and here's always a new edge to discover in doing things differently. Next week, new episode. Until then, keep pushing the edge and stay inspired. See you in the next episode.